consistencies in other cities around the world? Are there strategies that they're using that are similar? Are there similar challenges and obstacles that cities are facing, or music communities within cities are facing? And we found a lot of consistency. And so we identified those things, like the Music Council that Karl mentioned, a music officer or office in City Hall, more generally music-friendly cities and musician-friendly cities, and which we identified what tactically do you need to do in a city to become more music-friendly and musician-friendly. And that's probably, I think that's the key learning for a city like Calgary, is that, I mean, artists and musicians are the heart of a music city. Right. And so what can a city like Calgary do to incubate that talent and provide the necessary resources, the infrastructure, to give artists and musicians the opportunity to build their careers here, rather than go to Nashville or Toronto, and maybe they will at some point.
Sure.
They're certainly going to tour, because this is a global industry. Like, you are not, you can't be, you may not be able to achieve career success in your own city forever.
Yeah.
But there are certainly things that you can do, and Calgary can do. For instance, what's the inventory of venues? I mean, can't we talk about a venue ladder? So are there opportunities for artists to perform live right from the first time they're just playing acoustically in the corner of a cafe to the stadium, but every single point in between? So, and often cities will focus on building big soft seat theaters and art centers and forget about, what are they doing to create an environment where those small venues can thrive and survive? So those are some of the things.
Did you find that, Karl, too?
Well, yeah, I think you have to, if you want to have music everywhere, and you want music to be very open to the public, I think you need to have different types of venues. I think you also need to have free music. And so one of the things we did was we did two different venues in front of the courthouse, City Hall. We have a concert series that's been going on now for 5 or 6 years and does tremendously, where we have free concerts there on Thursdays. And those are mainly artists who are just breaking through, and it does very well. And then in Centennial Park, which is where we have our Parthenon. That's when I said the Athens of the South.
Right.
We always say our Parthenon's better than the one in Greece because it's newer. But we do a thing there called Musicians Corner, which is really focused on up-and-coming artists. Now, you may have other artists who come and play and help attract a crowd, but it's focused on up-and-coming people. Nashville is really driven by the honky-tonks. Honky-tonks are basically bars with music. And they're all located on Lower Broadway, and if you had to really break down what's driving Nashville's tourism is, again, people come because they want to go to the honky-tonks, and you see fantastic artists there, you hear great music, and most of these folks haven't made it yet. I mean, there's a lot of stars who used to be in honky-tonks, but the line between making it and being and playing in a honky-tonk is a very thin line. But it's a great time, and those places are packed, and there's lots of opportunities for musicians who are trying to break through to be able to play live, and that's probably the biggest appeal we have on those honky-tonks.
And can you legislate that, or whatever the term?
I think one of the things I should have said in my opening remarks is, look, I came in as mayor in 2007, and when we created the Music Council, there was a successful music industry in Nashville. Nashville's base of our industry are songwriters, and the government can't take any credit for getting songwriters to move to Nashville. They came there because they wanted to work together, they wanted to collaborate. There's an energy, an artistic energy that comes from that. And the studios had done fine without any government help or interference for all this time. But what I thought we could do is bring intentionality, expand it, help with our tourism base, help make the industry stronger, and we used economic development tools to do that, and I think it was successful. But the story of the success of the music industry in Nashville, you have to say, is a private sector story.
Right. And is part of that legend? I would think if I'm a young kid, I want to go to write where Hank Williams wrote. So, in my head, I think that's an automatic driver. Or is it also, is like you say, is there an energy created that says there's a lot of collaborators?
Right, it's a classic, I mean, we had Richard Florida up here. It's this classic sort of creative class idea, cluster of an industry where you have the more people you get, the more networking that occurs, the more exchange of ideas, the more come. And that's what I think happened around songwriting and on the music studios being in Nashville. And so I would say Nashville, people would be surprised, most parts of the country to hear this, is one of the classic examples of a creative class city. I mean, when you think about someone's capital, songwriters and musicians move to Nashville. And their capital is their ability to create something, their ability to play a song, to write a song, to entertain. And those are the type of people that mayors die for to have in your city. Because they bring so much energy, you know, they're not tied to the economy, they're sole proprietors and they're going to keep working. And they make the city unique. And so they're just wonderful people to have in your city.
Interesting. Andrew, give us a sense, just go big picture for a minute. Being the National Music Center, we're going to talk Calgary in a sec, but what's the big plans for the country?
Well, there's 4 or 5 key strategies to be a National Music Center. Number one, we believe that one way to achieve that is to tell our national music story. Because nobody's really doing that 365 days a year, championing this story, championing the work that our artists, both in front of the microphone, behind the microphone, in other places, within this ecosystem that Amy describes, who've done incredible things to foster our voice on the national and international stage. So writing that story is something that hasn't been done. Yes, there are music writers that have written books about artists. Yes, there are blogs and wikis that you can read about music in Canada. But to be much more intentional about it and to actually compete at an international level, we believe we needed a home and a place where this story could be fostered on a regular basis. Right. The second strategy is partnerships. Without partnerships, no one can do this alone, particularly in this digital age with what's happened in media and particularly music. So we've made, I would say, an extra effort to reach out to Toronto. That's how I met Amy. That's how we reached out to Montreal. I grew up there. I'm bilingual. I'm talking to people in the Quebec music industry on a regular basis about including them in the National Music Center. Their programming, their halls of fame, their artists, encouraging them to come to Calgary, perform in our venues, in our new venue now. So partnerships are key. Universities, artists, halls of fame, and music industry partners, as well as performing arts partners. 3, volunteers and individuals on our board. We have a national board. It may not seem like a difficult thing to do, but it is difficult to have a national board. There's different regional interests in this country. There's a lot of compromise that has to be made. But we made a focus, like our board chairs from Montreal, we have 2 board members from Toronto, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not all Calgarians. And that was intentional as well. The narrative that I mentioned to you earlier about volunteers, all of the writers that have helped contribute to our narrative in the new Studio Bell National Music Center stories, we've engaged about 100+ writers to help us write these stories. Writers from all walks of musical life in Canada. We did not take a curatorial approach by my full-time staff to say, here's the story and here it is, and this is the perspective. We took a national perspective and engaged dozens of writers from across Canada to help us write the story. And then the 5th strategy is artists. To Karl's point, without artists making music, writing songs, original music, particularly in the commercial vein, in all genres of music, bringing those artists to Calgary to record in our studios, to use the collections that we have at the National Music Center, to use a vintage console or a vintage drum machine or a set of amplifiers or synthesizers or historic pianos or harpsichords, all the things that we have in our collection. We've got 8 artists in residence coming to Calgary at the end of this year just to commission our new studios. And they're from all walks of musical life in this country. So bringing national artists at the emerging level, particularly, to a certain degree the established level, and having them be residents in Calgary, become part of the fabric here, play in the venues that are here, work with students that are here, talk to the general public about the music that they're making here and how Calgary's influencing their music. So that's been our broad national strategy.
And when Sean was talking earlier today about bureaucracy can kill things as simple as a water fountain, right? If you don't let anybody play in it, then it becomes this thing that people just walk away from or don't use. So you gotta be thinking about what is the interaction of it. Are there things, maybe Amy, that you have seen from a that sort of get in the way that people don't even realize are in the way. Like I know people say, well, it's a noise bylaw problem. There wasn't a noise bylaw problem. Are there things like that get in the way that we don't even realize get in the way?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Carl's right that it's private sector needs to drive your industry, and in most cities that have a credible opportunity to be a music city, there's been an organic growth of some form. It's a very collaborative industry. It's naturally. But there are cities, municipal laws and bylaws and regulations have a lot of influence. So planning laws, liquor licensing more at a provincial level, noise bylaws, postering. I mean, things like that. You know, an example of we had a postering issue in Toronto where there were very strict postering restrictions. The venues would not put up the posters, but the bands would put up the posters. But the bylaw officers would never find the bands. They'd go straight to the venue, and they'd find the venue $500 a pop, like a night. Well, that makes a huge difference for a venue that is already kind of on the borderline of profitability. So things like that can really get in the way. And, you know, that's where having a music commission, so you've got two-way dialogue between the music community and City Hall and tourism and other agents, or a music officer within City Hall. A music strategy, we recommend that there is an intentional music strategy. And those things, we have a very comprehensive one in Toronto that was just recently passed by City Council. Very, very aggressive. And, you know, we're seeing similar kind of work being done in London, Hamilton, Barrie, Ottawa, you know, a real trend in Ontario and in other cities as well.
Karl, in your work, is it the kind of thing people can... I'm always aware when we say it's good for tourism, that it feels like that's what everybody says when they want to do something that a lot of people don't want them to do. Yeah, but it's the dollars this is going to generate, then it becomes this dance. But do you find it good to sell music, and not that you need to sell it very hard, but to sell music as it will make money for people? Or is it, can you sell it on it's a good thing in and of itself?
Well, it's really a mixture of both. I mean, I think certainly a prime motivator for me, if I had to say as mayor, I had three priorities, which were public education, public safety, and economic development. I mean, I certainly think it's absolutely essential for a city to have a growing economy, to have the revenue pie expanding through growth instead of taxes. You know, you don't want to always be raising taxes. So if your economy's growing, it lets you do more. So when jobs are being created, which are created by the music industry, in which we were obviously involved in helping recruit companies and keeping companies in Nashville doing music, that's a good thing for our economy, and that's a good thing for the city. I mean, I think it goes beyond just saying it's good for tourism. I mean, people actually feel that when you have more revenue in the government that you can put into schools, that you can put into fire and libraries and greenways and things that people want. I also think there's an element, because of the importance of music to Nashville. I'll go back to this education piece. I'm really proud of the way the music industry stepped up. It was their idea. They said, if we're going to have this music council and we have all these goals that are really about promoting what we do, we want to do something that is going to help the city. And what's going to help the city is education, which is our top priority. And so if we're allowed to go into the schools and teach songwriting, if we're allowed to teach the mandolin or whatever, and offer a music program that is unique and special for Nashville, and our kids get the benefit of that. And all these musicians, I mean, as you know, love music, and they want their kids to love music. And so that's a great selling point too. I mean, that's an intangible that I think people in Nashville value.
Tell me a bit about your world, Andrew, and your hopes and dreams in the education field. I know a lot of it is...
Well, our predecessor organization, that some of you will remember, that kind of gave birth, if I can use that word, to the National Music Center, Campus Music Foundation, in our old building, which we moved out of very recently. We have been amplifying the Alberta learning curriculum for the better part of the last 18 years, mostly actually the last 12 years. So what we would do is we would bring actually non-music classes into our facility, and we would teach whatever core subject that they were working on through a lens of music. So it could be science, it could be math, it could be language arts. And we were actually very successful in working up through the Alberta learning curriculum, which is not easy. I mean, teachers need to become champions because they control the children's schedule, particularly in elementary school. High school and university is a whole other matter, as all of you know. So, we were serving, up until we moved, about 10,000 elementary school children a year in our very, very, very humble, modest facility. So in our new facility, we're estimating upwards to 50,000 a year that we could bring specifically into Studio Bell, and given how much more space we have and how many more areas we can teach a particular subject, those numbers will be significantly higher because we can reach not only within Calgary, but actually the outlying area as well. We, in the Customs House on 11th Avenue, our old building, we could never meet the demand that was out there in the community. I'll give you an example. So if the school year is from September to June, in an average school year, and school tours could start in October and run till late June, late May, early June, we were sold out for the last 5 years of capacity by November, for the rest of the year. Yeah, so if any teachers ever called us in December or January, February, there was simply no room. So there's this pent-up demand, certainly here in the Calgary region, for off-site experiences that are unique. And I think there's a lot to do with, music's place in most people's lives. There is an element of music that fits into really every subject matter, and most people appreciate music to a degree that they understand its value.
Yeah.
And so for K to 6, we see that as a very, very important element for not teaching, because we're not a music school. We don't teach music by rote. That's not what we do. Lots of other organizations in Calgary do that extremely well. But what we can do is expose the rest of the community that doesn't take formal music lessons to music and its importance and its role in their lives. And in so doing, help them become advocates.
Just by applause, how many people here graduated high school in the 90s? Okay. So you were one. What year?